As you know, in the afternoon, we had two speakers who were Democrats, Congresswoman Donna Edwards and Nick Cummings, who is the chief of the science staff of the Senate Science and Space Committee and an aide to Senator Nelson, a Democrat from Florida. So to have a bit of counterpoint, we have here tonight Andrew Gasser, sorry. Get a lot of speakers coming in this way. Yeah, Andrew Gasser, he is, I believe, the head of the Tea Party for Space, and he's a strong supporter of Donald Trump. He's not an official representative of the Trump campaign nationally, but he's very active in the Trump campaign in the Midwest. He's a significant player there. And he's going to tell us why Trump is the better choice for space.
Thank you very much. Excellent. I just want to first say thank you to the Mars Society. Bob, thank you very much for allowing me this opportunity to come before you all and speak to you about why I think that Donald J. Trump should be our next president. I realize that there's a lot of controversy going on right now. There's a lot of indecision, and there's a lot of angst about this, but we have to sit back and realize that this is our representative republic. Every 4 years, we get to elect a new commander-in-chief, a new executive who's going to give us a vision of where we want to take this country. Now, by a show of hands, who wants to go to Mars? Okay, everybody raised their hand. Almost everybody did. Now, seriously, if you're really serious about going to Mars, would you please stand up? Seriously, who's serious about going to Mars? Almost everybody, right? I am telling you that Donald J. Trump is going to be just as serious about our space policy as you are about wanting to go to Mars. And let me explain why. I got involved in the space policy business back in the late 2000s, 2007, I believe. I was an Air Force officer down in Florida. Got to do some really neat things, not only with surveillance, but also some space-based assets. And it really piqued my interest. And I started hearing about this thing called commercial crew and commercial cargo. And I was like, that's really neat. That's really how maybe we should do things. And it all came around about this thing called a Space Act Agreement. And what a Space Act Agreement does is it allows individuals, private companies, to interface and have a public-private relationship between the United States government and a company. And what this allowed SpaceX to do was to start developing the Falcon 1 rocket. Well, we all know what happened with the first 4 Falcons. The first one turned in and augured straight into the ground. After about 30 seconds, we learned that corrosion could be a very big problem. The private sector is starting to learn this. The second one, we had some staging issues. And finally, on the 5th one, we got it right. Think about that. The private sector did in 2.5 years what took NASA a whole decade. And you know why? Because you had that public-private sector relationship where they were able to go ahead and innovate quicker than the government moves. And I think that's a very big reason. And Donald Trump believes the same way. He's got $10 billion in assets, right? He doesn't sit there and make all the decisions, but what he does do is he delegates and gives authority to people who have the knowledge, who have the institutional ability to go ahead and make those right decisions to get us to where we want to go. And that's all about the free market. We're Americans. We embrace capitalism. We are thankful that we live in the greatest country on God's green earth, and we want to make sure that we stay that way. Our last speaker, Ms. Edwards, and I agree with her completely, said, you know, the world does better when we're leading the way. Why can't we lead the way going to Mars? Why can't we? We have the best brain power. We have amazing resources. We have an incredible budget, $19.5 billion to go spend on space. Now, we have to think about where we were in 2008 and where we are now. Are we really any closer to getting to Mars? We all said we were serious about that. Do we think that with how we currently are situated right now, that we can get everybody in this room to go to Mars using what we've got? I don't think so, but you know what? With the free market, New Glenn, Falcon Heavy, the BFR, right? We've got these new ideas that we would have never had if we didn't have the free market system in place. And Donald J. Trump believes in the free market. He believes that you have the ability. And in this room, we have many scientists and many engineers who have incredible ability and incredible ideas who get stifled because, guess what? They don't get the government funding because the system inside Washington says this money's going over to this player, and this money goes over to this player, and that's the way we've always done it. And you know, this side hates this side, and it's just the status quo. I think if I ask the question, does anybody here believe that Donald J. Trump is the status quo? And you think that, then maybe we can have that discussion. But I don't think so. And we need somebody in this country who's not going to be on the status quo, who's not going to be afraid to go in and tell career politicians and career bureaucrats who have sat inside the 495 for the whole entire lifetime and say, you know what, you got your retirement, you got your pension, it's time for you to move on. We need to go ahead and hire some of these new kids. I mean, we've got kids who are 21, 22 years old building Falcon 9s. And I remember when I was lobbying in DC, well, I wasn't lobbying, I was educating and informing. Educating and informing. Yeah, we didn't see that, right? No, I remember going and having congressional staffers, and I was told by a dear state senator friend of mine, Andy, you can say something against somebody, but don't use their name. So, Mr. Staffer, you're safe. I'm not going to use your name. But I went into a congressional office, and they said, you know what? Andy, SpaceX can't do this. Only NASA can. And that's simply not the case. We've got to change the system. We have to change how we do things. And the only way we're going to do that is if we start electing new people with new ideas who aren't afraid to stick their neck out, and sometimes we get our heads lopped off, and make that change. And that's what Donald J. Trump wants to do. He wants to change the system. It doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or whether you're a Republican. We can all agree that this electoral season was absolutely bonkers. And I have to be full disclosure here. I'm the chairman of the Republican Party for Algonquin Township in Illinois. Bernie Sanders absolutely annihilated Hillary where I was, and yet Bernie lost the delegate or the electoral or the delegate vote. Even though he won, he lost in Illinois. That's not our representative republic. That's our representative republic being denied. And the same thing happened in the Republican Party, too, in Colorado, if you look. But we have somebody now who can change that. So that's why I am so emphatic about my support for Donald J. Trump. That's why I want to go out there and try to make those changes. And that's why I'm here talking to a group of people who, in a very diverse group, with very different political opinions, very different ideas on how we get to Mars. But you know what? That we will have a forum, we will have a vehicle, we will have a way to where we can go ahead and actually start achieving these things. Because there's certain rules in politics that people want to forget. And one of them is declaring victory. And you know what? Every once in a while, using the government model, we can declare victory when we land a rover on Mars, or when we go ahead and we launch a new probe somewhere. But it's not like it should be. This is 2016. We're rolling into 2017. We should be launching all the time. Our space program should be the envy of everyone, right? I mean, we're launching cores, landing cores. We've got Falcon. We've got Atlas. We've got Delta. We should just be cleaning the clock with everybody. We have so many new ideas that we can do. And by the way, there are all sorts of great experiments inside SMD that get funneled away every year. Because why? Not that they weren't great ideas and that we shouldn't do them. I love the Discover program. But we don't get to do them because we don't have enough money because of the bureaucracy. And we need to change that. So and I know that's something that Donald J. Trump and his administration would do. They would change it. It was pretty funny because we're talking about bipartisanship and how one side hates the other side. And I'm going to just take on the issue right now. Global warming, whether you agree with it or disagree with it. Climate change, whether you agree with it or disagree with it. You know what? Inside the NASA Authorization Act back in 1957, guess what? NASA's mission is Earth science. Guess what? That means we have to study Earth science. I realize that there's some in my party who don't get that, and guess what? There's some in the other side that don't get it either. Ours are just more braggadocious and sometimes get on different channels because they know they're going to get the publicity in the press. But we have to do that, and I know that will continue to happen. I have very good friends on both sides of the aisle, and they've done some great things. And I sit there and I wonder in amazement, because I'm just a little economist, and these guys are like 10-pound brains. They're huge. They have all these ideas. And the one thing they always tell me, I mean, I'm not going to say his name, but he specifically told me, Andy, I could have done so much more with my mission if they would have just got out of my way. We've got to limit the government. We've got to go ahead and get government out of our lives, whether that's a space program, whether that's a bedroom. It doesn't matter. We don't need any government there. What we need is sensible regulation coming from the FAA, coming from our leaders, that's saying, you know what, we have a serious problem as far as how we make get up and get down, but ultimately, in the end, we're going to let you either fail or succeed on the own merits of your mission and your own labor and your own hard work. And again, this is all things that I'm not just saying about Donald Trump. You can go look at his history with the companies that he's built. He's had enormous failures, and he's having even greater successes. All around the world, he built an enormous not a residential, but a real estate empire, and they're very successful properties, no matter where you go. So if he can take that same type of business mentality, and we can somehow incorporate that into our federal government, and that doesn't mean we're going to change everything overnight. It's impossible. Our government is built to crawl. It's built to grow. So Congressman Edwards was exactly right. We get together sometimes, and it just crawls. But that's what our forefathers wanted. They wanted it to go slow because they wanted to make sure that they preserved our individual liberty and our freedom and our rights. So the first thing about the Tea Party I want to tell you, because it's all, I've been invited on MSNBC 3 times, and each time they said, Andy, you can't go on, you're too rational. But the first thing is fiscal responsibility. I don't know, I mean, and both sides are responsible for this, but we haven't been fiscally responsible. If we think about Constellation, James Webb Space Telescope, where the former SMD administrator said $1 billion doesn't buy you much anymore, who here would like $1 billion for their project? Just raise your hand. Yeah, guys, yeah, I don't want to raise my hand. The Tea Party guy said raise my hand. But no kidding, we could do a lot with $1 billion. That's 2 Discover projects. Could we do some great stuff in astrophysics with that? Absolutely. Think about what we could do with a Space Act agreement if we had a commander-in-chief, and NASA is an executive branch, part of the executive branch. What if we had a commander-in-chief that said, you know what? Every year, we're going to do at least 1 Discover program, and it's going to be utilizing Space Act agreements. Academia, here you go, kicks you the football, and then the politicians just get the heck out of your way. That would be bananas. That would create so much energy. That would create so much more innovation, so much more inspiration for not just NASA, but now all of a sudden you're on MSNBC and you're watching another rocket take off to go study Venus. Or you know what, you're watching CNN and now you're watching a double mission because we got a really heavy satellite and we're using a Delta Heavy for that. And we've got the Red Dragon going to Mars in 2018. How cool would that flippin' be? Think about it. This is what Donald J. Trump brings to America. He's not afraid to sit there and, I've got to take a poll before we say it. And look, let's be honest. Sometimes people open their mouths and you're just like, oh. We've all had it happen. I have to tell you, I'm an elected politician. It happens to me too. I hate it. But I term limit myself. I didn't take the health care, didn't take the pension, and I'm not going to be around anyway. But my point to this is this. Sometimes people say things in the heat of the moment we wish they didn't say. But the truth of the matter, you have to judge people on their actions. What have they done? What have they been responsible for? Have they had successful outcomes? Have they had unsuccessful outcomes? We have to look at that. This is our commander-in-chief. This is the leader of the free world. And oh, by the way, if we're serious about Elon really going to Mars in 2025, we'll all find out Tuesday what his grand plan is. But and everybody's, oh, yeah, you're so serious. How about Jeff Bezos and Blue Origin, huh? New Glenn coming out, new Armstrong coming out. There's going to be competition there, and we're going to be able to design multiple missions using multiple vehicles, and we can compare each other and say, what's going to be the better vehicle? And there's a third competitor out there. I know there is. We need a commander-in-chief who's not going to be afraid to say, you know what? we're going to Mars, and it's going to be an American sitting on being the first person to step on Mars. And oh, by the way, it's not going to be a man, it's going to be a woman. That would be really flipping cool. I don't know if Donald J. Trump would do that, but that's his mentality, that's his attitude, that's his persona, that's what he encapsulates. When you look around the people he surrounds himself with, I can tell you one of the best things, best trait any politician will ever do in their entire life is surround themselves with not good people, not great people, but brilliant people. And oh, by the way, they don't always agree with you. I tell all of my people all the time, I don't want you to agree with me or think like me. I just want you to think critically. Think critically. This election coming up is going to have ramifications, not for the next 4 years, not for the next 8 years. This is going to have implications on the American Republic for decades. This is going to have regulation reform. You're thinking about potentially of what's going to be happen with who's going to be allowed to go to space. We have enormous challenges inside the space community right now. One of the biggest ones I hear about all the time is ITAR, right? We have employees overseas who are doing amazing things, especially in the Mars field, where they're coming up with all these great ideas. And you know what? The people in the United States can't friggin' share information with them because, guess what? They're not an American citizen, and now they're blocked off. They don't get to do that. We can't share that information legally. We have to we have to pull back a lot of this information, or these regulations, excuse me, because if we don't, then we're just having a more bureaucratic government, and we'll get more of the same. We can talk about how the grind has been with Orion. We can talk about what happened with Shuttle. We can talk about what happened with CXP. And you know what? I am very happy right now with where the Space Launch System is going. They said not to mention Space Launch System, but I'm going to mention it anyway. I am, because guess what? Right now, that's how we're going to Mars. You have to design that. You have to design around that. That's where our nation is right now. And I realize that some of this is kind of uncomfortable. I can see it out there. But that's the reality. Really, it's the reality. Space Launch System is the reality. That's how we're going. And Congresswoman Edwards was right. Right now, there's this big argument between, do we want to do ARM or do we want to go to Mars? Wouldn't it be nice if we had a commander-in-chief that said, dudes, this is what we're doing, go. And then he gets out of the way. And hopefully, and no matter what president you elect, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican, there's always a bit of uncertainty. It's always there. And we can go all the way back, all the way from the beginning. There's always uncertainty. But we have to figure out who's going to lead us and who's going to be the best for space. Who's going to monetize and economize space? We've got two choices. Who here likes to build businesses and raise money, and who here maybe doesn't have the same private sector experience? And I'm not even going to talk about PACs or any of that other stuff because that's just crazy. But the point being is we need someone who's going to be able to say, you know what, if you go to Mars and you find some amazing ore, guess what? You own it. Is that going to incentivize all of us to want to head up and go to Mars? Elon says he wants millions of people going. Do we feel right now that in our space program we can get millions of people going up to Mars? We all stood up. We all said we were serious about it. So these are some of the reasons I believe Donald J. Trump is the best choice if you are a space voter. And that's all we're talking about tonight. We're talking about space. Who is going to be the best one to unshackle the handcuffs that have been placed around the wrists and the anklets that have been placed around the footlets that have been placed around the ankles, to unleash the ingenuity and the entrepreneurial spirit that is America. And I realize we have people from all around the world watching. I realize that we have people in this room who aren't Americans. But you know what? When I served overseas, I would love to come to America. I love the freedom. I want the opportunity. And that's what this land is. This is a land of opportunity. They're beaten down. They're running over the border right now coming here. They know that this is the best place on earth. We need to have a commander-in-chief that's going to say, you know what? We are the best place to be on earth. Come here legally. And oh, by the way, do what you want to do. Improve our society, build our society. Don't change from what it is. Help us become better. Don't bring it down. In the end, and then I would be happy to take questions. When we think about space, we think about Mars. Look up there. You can see Earth right there, the little dot. How big of an economy is that? It's the infinite economy. It is the infinite economy that we, as people who want to go to Mars, who want to build a space economy, need to, look, it's not about, we need to exploit that. We need to be the stakeholders. We need to be the stakeholders who are going to go ahead and develop that for our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren and our great-grandchildren's children. And I truly believe if this is what we want to do, if we really want to stand up and stand out amongst our peers and amongst our people, Donald J. Trump, in my opinion, is the greatest or the best candidate in this election cycle. And with that, I'd be happy to take questions. Yes, sir.
I think if we want to know where Donald Trump stands on space exploration, we should read what he has said. Quote, in the old days, NASA was great. Right now, we have bigger problems. We have to fix our potholes. How inspiring is that? A mission to fix and fill our potholes. Forget about Mars. And that's not enough. This other comment's incredible. He was asked, Mr. Trump, would your administration continue planning to send astronauts to Mars in the 2030s? Why or why not? And Trump's response, a lot of what my administration would recommend depends upon our economic state. If we are growing with all of our people employed, low unemployment, and our military readiness back to acceptable levels, then we can take a look at the timeline for sending more people into space. Not necessarily even going to Mars, just into space.
Yep.
I think that, now I know how you could win his support. If Donald Trump believed he could set up some kind of real estate venture claiming Mars as his property to make billions of bucks, he'd say, let's go right now. Give NASA whatever they want.
Sir,
I want to plant my Trump flag on Mars.
So thank you for that, and I understand the passion, and I appreciate it. I didn't get your name, but I'm going to try to answer it. In my state of Illinois, I have to pay $82 an hour to fix the potholes. And you know what? When you go from a local government to a federal government, the zeros just keep on going. And right now, we do have big problems. We do have serious social problems. We have economic problems that we do have to fix. So when Donald J. Trump says that, he's being realistic with you. He's saying what you don't want to hear. And we have this cognitive dissonance. And then the last thing is our economic state right now, some people say it's really good. Some people say it's really bad. I can't take your question. I apologize. I'd love to. Oh, I can? Okay. So you know what? If we improve the economy, if we use Space Act agreements, we got 19.5 million, correct? And we can go ahead and 19.5 billion for NASA, right? And we can go ahead and we can shift some of that to where we can use Space Act agreements. I think then we can do those things. And I would venture to say that Donald Trump will have another speech on space. Yes, sir. Last one. Oh, right here.
Sorry, I'm going to bring up a little historical perspective relating to the very last thing you said before you took questions. And that is, I would invite you to consider the early spring of 1945. And who had the world's greatest rocket and space program back in 1945 in the spring?
Germany.
Germany. Yeah. I'll leave it at that.
Excellent. And wait. What's your name, sir?
Ken Brandt.
Ken, that is an excellent point. And what happened? The Germans came to America. They immigrated legally. We incorporated. They embraced. Wernher von Braun is one of the biggest. No. We need to hear this, right? Embraced Americanism. He is the father of our Apollo program. That's fine. And think about all the engineers, all the young men, and all the young women that he inspired. I think these are all great points, but I think we're kind of taking only our worldview, and we're not looking at the entire picture with that. Go ahead. I'll take one more.
Oh, okay. Let me be very short. Suppose that Donald Trump were willing to actually come on board the government, whoever's president, and show us that his capabilities could take over and change NASA for the better. Do you think he'd do it? Do you think he could do it? Why or why not?
So I have to be a little bit careful with this because I don't know how much I can and can't say, but what I would say is this. I do believe Donald Trump will have a major space policy speech at some point. Every presidential candidate does, right? President Obama did it last time. Mitt Romney went. Everybody goes down to the space. At some point, I'm sure something like that will happen. But I'll tell you this, too. When you look at the things that Donald Trump has touched, some have failed, and some have succeeded greatly. And if nothing else, Donald Trump's tagline, right, is "Make America Great Again." What would be better to make America great again than to make America great again in space? Why can't we lead? And the thing is we have to have, and I'll wrap it up, we have to have the ability, we have to have the forceful intuition, we have to go ahead and basically say, look, we're going to stand up and we are going to go ahead and we are going to go to Mars. And we need to, and the last thing I'll say is, Congressman Edwards said, we have to lobby Congress. We do. But we have to lobby our presidential candidates, too, what side you're on. You need to make it known that you want to hear that. Because if you don't go ahead and say space is an issue, well, guess what? They're not going to do that. And as a politician, I'll tell you, if people are complaining to me about something and only 1% of the population is complaining about it, well, I'll listen to you and I'll try to do the best thing. But it gets pushed to the side when we have other issues like potholes in the road, per se. So that we have to have our nominee come out and do that at some point. One more? Oh. Well, I want to thank you all very much for allowing me to come up here and speak. I'm very humbled that, Bob, you would allow me this opportunity. I will forever be grateful for it. And I hope you all have a wonderful and blessed evening. Thank you very much.